After much anticipation, Kirby finally makes his first appearance in the third dimension in Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Having been released worldwide for the Nintendo Switch on March 25, 2022, Kirby and the Forgotten Land stays just over a month shy of being released at the time of the 30th anniversary of this series' introductory title, Kirby's Dream Land. While this title does provide an additional access for Kirby to explore, it largely maintains core gameplay concepts found in most mainline Kirby games, while also adding new ideas to make this outing still feel fresh. There are, however, some aspects of Kirby and the Forgotten Land that may leave players feeling as though this title is struggling to take full advantage of the newly present space. Kirby and the Forgotten Land follows a very simple premise. The opening scene shows Kirby happily floating through the skies of Planet Popstar, only to be briskly interrupted by a mysterious portal that appears in the distance, consuming the landscape and creatures of the like, only to eventually be taken in himself. He then finds himself on an unfamiliar beach, and at this point, the player is left to their own devices. This sequence in its entirety takes approximately a minute and a half to play out, allowing players to jump right into the new experience. For those who may have been expecting more to come out of this game's plot, not much is to be found here, at least for most of the game. As can be found in other Kirby installments, Forgotten Land does offer more story in the latter end of the adventure without providing much, if any, exposition within the bulk of the game. This allows Forgotten Land to tell stories of its various environments with the scenery itself, letting the player come to whichever conclusions they wish for how certain locations ended up the way they did. Rather than a story that must be experienced attentively, players are expected to infer what events may take place or where they may end up through thumbnails and level titles. This ultimately works in the title's favor as it makes it more accessible as a pick-up-and-go style of game, which pairs nicely given the system it appears on. Platforming is an important element that will forever be ingrained into Kirby's DNA. Since the series' inception, maneuvering through stages by hopping and floating, mixed with a style of combat that allows enemies to be turned into weapons, has been the norm. Forgotten Land does not shy away from these principles. Providing players with a number of worlds, each with plenty of thoughtfully designed levels to explore, Forgotten Land has an abundance of fun ideas in its level design, keeping any two levels from feeling the same. The game's difficulty level overall is quite light, but there are two difficulty options for players to choose from: Spring Breeze mode and Wild mode. Overall, the two playstyles are very similar, with the main difference being that while playing in Spring Breeze mode, Kirby has more health, being more tanky than in Wild mode. Due to the level of difficulty and length of levels, Forgotten Land can be anywhere from an 8 to 12 hour experience. While transitioning from 2D to 3D may cause some aspects to be tweaked, overall controlling Kirby in this game feels exactly as expected. He is still able to jump, float, and inhale enemies to gain familiar copy abilities, as well as two new ones, Ranger and Drill. These abilities, along with all the rest, can be evolved into more powerful versions of themselves by finding various blueprints along this adventure. Most evolutions will give a copy ability an additional effect, as well as change the abilities cosmetically. Evolutions need to be funded by paying with star coins, the title's primary currency, and rare stones, which are mostly found in Treasure Road bonus stages. These stages will pop up at a number of points in the overworld map, providing an optional challenge for those who wish to push the game's copy abilities to their limits. Included in some of these stages are a mechanic exclusive to Forgotten Land, mouthful abilities. Many objects can be found scattered around most stages for Kirby to inhale, but not swallow. The earliest examples of this would be the car mouthful ability, allowing Kirby to move at high speeds and break through fragile walls, and the cone mouthful ability that allows Kirby to plummet downward to break through cracks found in the ground and in water pipes. All mouthful abilities introduced are a joy to use and are reused frequently through the course of the game's runtime. Some of the most notable aspects of controlling Kirby come with the height at which he can float and the length of time he is able to. When releasing from the ground, Kirby is only able to float a set distance from whichever platform he is above at the time. If Kirby ends up floating above a platform that is higher than the one he left from, the game allows the player to adjust their maximum height relative to that platform instead. If Kirby approaches a platform that is close to but still higher than his maximum height, he will not make the adjustment. This can sometimes be a frustrating mechanic to manage, while also taking into consideration that Kirby is not able to infinitely float around stages in this game. Kirby is able to stay airborne for about 8 seconds before becoming fatigued and slowly falling to the ground. It is entirely understandable that the developers would try to keep vertical mobility limited, as in open spaces, complete freedom could be abused to skip entire sections of some levels. However, in more enclosed sections, it can feel quite limiting and hinders mobility. Another mobility-related topic is the speed at which Kirby moves. Kirby's running speed in this game is not very fast and is only able to be adjusted temporarily with a purchasable item. Additionally, there are also items to be purchased that can increase Kirby's attack power and defensive capabilities. These power-ups help to strengthen Kirby's abilities, but given that they only last 200 seconds upon use, their main purpose lies more in assisting players during larger encounters such as boss fights rather than affecting Kirby indefinitely throughout the adventure. Credited as leading the charge for Forgotten Lands music is a veteran from HAL's sound team, Hirokazu Ando. Working on the series as early as Kirby's Adventure for the NES, he has been a relevant figure in shaping the way this series sounds from nearly the beginning. Forgotten Lands soundtrack is a mixed bag of some of the highest highs the series has ever seen, as well as some tracks that fail to scratch that itch the same way. Songs including the main motif presented in this title become tired very quickly. One song that suffers from this the most is the track that plays in the game's main hub, Waddle Dee Town. When it comes to songs that replay from the beginning upon returning to a high-traffic area, the first few seconds of a song begin to make an impression. Unfortunately for Forgotten Land, re-listening to the town's theme can become less enjoyable as time goes on. In contrast to this game boasts what may be the best rendition of Mount DDD to date, Roar of DDD. Mount DDD's appearance is booming with sounds of the electric guitar, primal chanting, clanging metal, brass and strings strung together surprisingly harmoniously. There are a handful of really standout originals that the soundtrack has to offer on top of this. Notable tracks such as The Waste Where Life Began and Abandoned Beach are both wonderful to listen to and offer so much variety in their instrumentation and presentation that they almost sound as though they could be from two entirely separate games. Because of examples like these, barring a few tracks as previously mentioned, Forgotten Land's soundtrack is frequently refreshing and provides a high level of replayability. Although Forgotten Land does lack a captivating plot and runs into some issues with gameplay limitations, whatever setbacks this game has should not be a deterrent from giving it a chance. Getting used to Kirby in this new space takes no time at all, and the mouthful abilities paired with the accompanying new terrains do a lot to help switch up the pace. Hopefully this is only the beginning of what HAL has to offer for Kirby in a 3D setting, and I'm personally very enthusiastic to see where they take the Kirby series next.